I'm just wondering why Billy Graham have not been converted, and Joel Osteen and all those big Protestant evangelists have not.
Sure. Yeah, I can answer that. I think so. I think I can answer it, and I really appreciate the question. So I'm fortunate when I get a phone call on the radio, my call screener puts it on a computer in front of me, so I have a chance to look at it before you get on the air.
Uh-huh.
And so I've known for about the last 5 minutes that I was going to get a chance to talk about this. And so between calls, I took the opportunity to pull up online a section of Billy Graham's autobiography.
Sneaky.
Just as I Am.
Okay.
And I think he answers the question. I read this book years ago, and I remember this passage. It's what stood out in my mind. So Billy Graham's, as a young man coming up, like me, he was a Southern boy and a Southern Baptist. Catholicism was not on his radar. He just was not exposed to the Catholic faith. It wasn't an issue for him.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, if he had some awareness of Catholicism, Catholics were the bad guys. They were people that needed to be converted, right? That's kind of the way the Southern Baptist Church historically has treated Catholics in the South. So the intellectual question that he dealt with as a young man wasn't Catholicism, it was historical criticism of the Bible. So there was a threat to his evangelical Baptist upbringing, and it was the reliability of sacred Scripture. And he was confronted with scholarly attacks on the reliability of the Bible, which would undermine his whole Baptist faith. And he had to come to terms with that if he was going to be a Baptist preacher. And he actually thought about leaving the ministry. He thought about going back and becoming a dairy farmer, right? And then he was in the San Bernardino Mountains, he tells us, at a retreat center, wrestling with these questions. And he stopped in the woods and opened his Bible, and he couldn't read it. It was too dark. But with the Bible opened in front of him, he said this, and I'm actually reading from his autobiography. The exact words of my prayer are beyond recall, but it must have echoed my thoughts. Oh God, there are many things in this book I do not understand. There are many problems with it for which I have no solution. There are many seeming contradictions. There are some areas in it that do not seem to correlate with modern science. I can't answer some of the philosophical and psychological questions that others are raising. I was trying to be on a level with God, Billy Graham says, but something remained unspoken, and at last the Spirit freed me to say, Father, I am going to accept this as your word by faith. I'm going to allow faith to go beyond my intellect and questions and doubts, and I will believe that it's your inspired word. Period. End of quotation. So what I discern from that is that Billy Graham was a fideist. A fideist. A fideist is someone who does not think that faith and reason can be reconciled. And when there is an apparent conflict between faith and reason, he will go with faith and not with reason. Now, as a Baptist, the foundation of Billy Graham's faith and life was his Baptist understanding of the Bible.
Okay.
And when that understanding was called into question, he made a decision to shut down his intellect and to double down on the foundation of his Baptist faith, which was the Bible alone and the Bible interpreted according to Baptist theology. And he just said at the outset of his ministry, I will not entertain challenges to that belief. This is the conviction on which I will build my ministry, period, end of paragraph. And so he was a fideist. So whether the challenge come from natural science, whether it come from philosophy, whether it come from Catholicism, Billy Graham made a decision at the beginning of his ministry not to entertain those kinds of challenges.
Wow.
That he was going to build his ministry and his life on a certain conception of the Christian faith, and he wasn't open to dialogue about it. And that's not very uncommon, right? And we can all be given to this kind of irrationalism or fideism. A Catholic could do it too. The Catholic who said, I will accept the Catholic faith because Grandmom says so, and I will shut my eyes and ears and say, nah, if people try to challenge me on it, that would also be fideistic. Now, Here's what you need to know. The Catholic faith is not fideistic, and in fact, fideism, the doctrine that faith and reason cannot be reconciled, that's a heresy. The Catholic Church has condemned that position. And a Catholic should never be afraid of information, whether it come from philosophy or natural science or history or Protestant biblical scholarship or whatever it is. And if a Catholic is confronted with something that is in tension with his faith, the proper disposition is not to shut down intellectual dialogue or dialectic, but to draw distinctions and to seek for reconciliation between faith and reason. And that's part of the reason that I'm Catholic. I was not raised Catholic. I was raised not a Baptist, but I was raised around a lot of Baptists, so I was kind of a Presbyterian with a Baptist flair, if you will. Okay. And I actually studied not with Billy Graham specifically, but with some of Billy Graham's associates, right? And very smart men. Oh yeah, mostly men, really. But they had laid down some tracks. They had put some fences up in their intellectual life and said, across this fence we will not go, because gosh, if you cross that fence, you become a Catholic. We can't have that. Oh no. And eventually the cognitive dissonance became too great for me, and I saw it's in the Catholic faith that I'm going to reconcile faith and reason and these conflicts. But some people just say, no, we're not going to cross that line.